Dan was a farmer. Well, almost a farmer. He had a big piece of land, a shiny cutlass, a strong hoe, and even a pair of old boots. But there was one small problem. Dan hated working. Every morning the sun would rise, the birds would sing, and his friends would head to the farm. But Dan would still be lying on his mat, scratching his head and stretching like a lazy cat. "Dan, let's go to the farm," his friend Tom said one morning. Dan yawned. Not today, Tom. The sun is too hot. I might melt like butter." The next day Ben came. "Dan, get up. Let's go. The ground is soft after the rain." Dan held his back and groaned. My waist is paining me. Maybe tomorrow." The day after that, Sam came with a basket of tools. "Let's go, Dan." Dan looked at the sky and said, "It looks like rain. I don't want to catch cold. You know I'm a delicate man." Day after day, Dan came up with new reasons. "I have a small cough. I didn't sleep well. My big toe is shaking." Even his pet goat, Lulu, was tired of hearing him talk. His friends laughed behind his back. Dan can talk, but he cannot dig. Meanwhile, Tom, Ben, and Sam worked hard every day. They cleared land, planted seeds, and watered their crops. But Dan sat under a mango tree, peeling oranges and telling stories. "I'll start farming tomorrow," he always said. But tomorrow came and went, and Dan was still lying down. One bright morning, Dan finally woke up and said, "Today is the day. I will go to the farm." Lulu the goat almost fainted. She looked at him with wide eyes like, "Are you serious this time?" Dan tied his old boots, picked up his cutlass, wore his favorite sun hat, the one with a hole on top, and walked slowly, very slowly, to his farm. When he reached the farm, he stood still. His eyes grew wide, his mouth opened. What is this?" he shouted. His farm looked like a small forest. Tall grasses had taken over everything. Weeds were growing like they paid rent. His little corn plants were nowhere to be seen. Some were yellow, some were eaten by insects, and some had just died quietly. Dan bent down and touched one dry plant. It broke in half like biscuit. "My farm is finished," Dan whispered. He sat on a rock, looking around in shame. Even the birds didn't bother visiting his farm anymore. There was nothing to steal. He scratched his head. "If I had come last week, maybe it would not be this bad. If I had started last month, maybe my corn would be ready now." But it was too late. Dan had wasted time, and now the bushes had taken over. Dan sat on a rock in the middle of his bushy farm. He was tired, angry, and full of regret. As he looked around, he saw something that made his heart beat faster, not from joy, but from jealousy. Across the road, his friends were working on their farms. Tom was laughing as he pulled out big, healthy corn from the ground. Ben was filling a basket with fresh groundnuts. Sam was carrying a large sack of bright red tomatoes. Everything looked beautiful. Everything looked green, full, and alive. Dan stood up and shouted, So all of you have good farms now, and you left me to suffer?" He walked over to them and raised his voice. "You people are wicked. You should have dragged me to the farm. Is this how friends behave? You knew I needed help." Tom stopped harvesting and wiped his face. "Dan, we called you many times. You always had one story or the other." Ben nodded. "One day you said you were tired. Another day it was too sunny. Then it was too cold. Then your back was scratching you. We got tired." Sam looked at Dan and said, "We cannot carry you on our head, Dan. You are not a baby." Dan felt small. He looked down at his slippers and kicked a stone. He had no reply. Deep in his heart, he knew they were right. But instead of saying sorry, Dan just hissed and walked away slowly. Lulu the goat followed him, looking just as embarrassed. Dan returned home with an empty hand and a heavy heart. His farm had failed. His friends had spoken the truth. And now he had to face the biggest trouble of all, his family. As he walked through the door, his wife looked up. Her name was Lena. "Dan," she said sharply, "what did you bring from the farm?" Dan sat down quietly. Nothing, he whispered. Lena stood up. Nothing? You mean after 3 months of lying in this house, you brought nothing? Not even one corn? Not even one groundnut? What kind of man are you? Dan scratched his head. The sun was too hot. The rain came at the wrong time. And then, the goats! Please, Lena shouted. Stop blaming the weather and the goats. The only thing hot is your excuses. Just then, their 3 children came in, looking hungry and tired. Daddy, what are we eating today? The oldest one asked. Dan looked at them and said, Well, maybe you should ask your mother. Lena folded her arms. Ask me. You're the farmer, the lazy farmer. Go and cook your excuses and feed them. The whole house was in confusion. The children were hungry. Lena was angry. And Dan? Dan sat quietly, looking like a wet chicken. Even Lulu the goat didn't come near him that evening. Days passed, and things got worse. Lena stopped talking to Dan unless she was shouting. His friends stopped visiting. Nobody wanted to listen to his stories anymore. They were all too busy harvesting success, while Dan was harvesting trouble. Dan had never felt this sad before. His farm had failed. His friends had left him. His wife barely spoke to him, and even his goat, Lulu, now preferred to sit with the neighbors. One morning, Dan sat under the mango tree, staring into space. He looked like a man who had lost his remote and didn't know how to change the channel of life. Just then, an old man named Papa Joe was passing by. Papa Joe was known in the village for his white beard and wise words. My son, Papa Joe said, why are you sitting like a bag of tired rice? Dan sighed loudly. Papa Joe, my life is finished. My farm is bush, my friends have left me, and my wife thinks I'm a joke. Papa Joe sat beside him. Did you plant anything? He asked. Dan shook his head. Number I was going to. I kept planning to. But each time I said, tomorrow. Now. Look at me. Papa Joe nodded. You see, tomorrow is like a thief. It keeps stealing your chances while you sleep. Dan looked up. So what do I do now? Everyone is angry with me. Papa Joe smiled. Start small. Wake up early. Clear one corner of your farm each day. No more excuses. Stop talking. Start doing. Dan nodded slowly. And what if they don't believe I can change? Papa Joe laughed. Then show them with your actions. Even a lazy goat can learn to walk if it wants grass badly enough. Dan smiled for the first time in weeks. He stood up, dusted his shorts, and looked at the road. Tomorrow. No, today. I'll go to the farm, he said. Papa Joe clapped. Now you're thinking like a real farmer. And from that day, Dan started small. One bush at a time. One row at a time. Slowly, the farm began to look like a farm again. His wife started smiling again. His children had food again. And Lulu? Well, Lulu came back home too. Lessons. 1. If you keep waiting for the perfect time, you will wait forever. There is no perfect time to start. Just start. 2. If you don't take care of your work, it will fall apart. Small delays today can lead to big problems tomorrow. Start early. 3. It's easy to blame others, but it takes wisdom to accept your own mistakes. Your future is your own responsibility. No one will chase your dreams for you. 4. Laziness doesn't only affect you. It affects your family, your friends, and your future. The work you avoid today becomes the hunger you face tomorrow. 5. It's never too late to change. Talking will not grow your future, only action will. Start today. Even small steps can lead to big results.
Dan's story began to change, one small step at a time. He didn't wait for the perfect moment anymore. He made the moment perfect by showing up. Even when it was hard, because sometimes all it takes is one decision, and the courage to follow through. So the next time you feel stuck, remember Dan, and the wise words of Papa Joe. Don't wait for tomorrow, start today, even if it's just one tiny step. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a little motivation today. And if you want more inspiring, funny, and relatable stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. See you in the next story.